Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sports Live with Steve and Justin. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Your Honor.
How are you today?
I'm doing all right. I
Like
came
it?
prepared. I've got my jester hat on for the circus.
I wore my T-shirt too, and I'd like to say I planned it out, but it was basically the only thing I had left clean. I pulled it out. I said, "Oh, here's a clean shirt." I pulled it out. I was like, "Oh, it's a Giant shirt." So here we go. That's interesting segue. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your watches last week, all your kind thoughts, all your live people that are out there. I appreciate it. I know Justin appreciates it too, that we're somewhat surprised at the people out there that kind of tuning to us, and we really appreciate it. But to get to the problems at hand, we originally were going to speak, and we will, a great deal about gambling. The indictments came out today, and more indictments, and blah 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 blah. You can't be surprised, right?
Baseball
And
too.
and baseball. So, and we'll speak about that. But you know, Justin and I and a bunch of others were doing a fundraiser yesterday, and we were watching the Giant collapse. And there's no other word for it. And it's not the first collapse. And there's one thing that we say to each other, and others say to each other, is that they don't seem prepared. And I don't think they're prepared. And then to ride on a running back, which is okay, and he ends up getting hurt. And then to expect your quarterback, who is your future. I mean, I don't know what to say. If Dart isn't your future, I don't know who your future is. I mean, you have a quarterback that is exciting, that the fans love, that makes things happen, and you throw him out there to win a game to save your job for any other reason. And you know you're a lame duck coach at this point, and to save your job, and you throw this kid out there and he gets hurt, he gets a concussion. And it reminds me of other times I've seen that. And RG3, remember back in the
Yeah.
day? I mean, he was
Oh
thrown
yeah.
out there and he got hurt and ruined his whole career.
Yeah. He wasn't 100% healthy, and they sent him out there, and he was still very young.
He got hit. And I remember watching us saying, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's part of it. And the other part is they really suck. So, I mean, the GM is the problem to me.
Yeah. I I'm not surprised that Dable got fired. I know, we had talked about it even before the Broncos game, that you felt that he was the problem, that you didn't think that, he was a good head coach. I was still kind of holding on there because I thought, he had maybe a little bit more control, and maybe it's just his personality, because I really kind of liked his coaching style when he first got here. And he was tied to Daniel Jones because they brought him in to fix that. And I guess he never really did. I guess he tried to more play to his strengths than rather coach the inefficiencies that he had. But at the same time, the GM, I think, showed his true colors in Hard Knocks. And it's very much a circus. They divorced themselves. When I say they, the general manager and the owner divorced themselves from the head coach the minute he made the decision to play Jackson Dart, which really, how does that give your quarterback any confidence going into that? That the owner and the GM divorced themselves from the head coach that they picked to be the guy to coach you, and then they don't want you to play. Or maybe they thought he wasn't ready to play, or they thought they could still win games with Russell Wilson. And there's so many things at play here, but we'll stick to Dable first. There's no way he could survive, what happened, losing a lead 4 times this season, and they're telling you now the odds of them losing all 4 of those games were astronomical. I don't know how the defensive coordinator survived Denver and giving up 33 points in the fourth quarter. And then yesterday, fast forward, after we talked about the last few weeks, especially after the Scatterbo injury, that they had to do something to protect Jackson Dart from getting hurt. And they couldn't have him running all over the field. It had to be a last option. They had to do something to show that they were going to not just play on his strengths, but bring him along and show that they could fine tune his game a little bit more and get him out of the comfort zone while protecting him in the pocket to make throws. And I know that they have injuries. Malik Neighbors is out, and obviously Scottibo's out, and they've got they lost receivers, and they're playing 2 or 3 men down on offense, but that doesn't change the fact that you have to progress as an offense and teach your quarterback things that he has to learn to be successful in the future so that your franchise can win games. And Dable just wasn't doing that. He was just going out there and playing to Dart's strengths, which is exactly what got him in trouble. And I know it was kind of a freak thing because he came down weird and he got kneed in the head. And at first, when he was laying there, I thought he landed on the ball and maybe he had got winded or, at worst, fractured a rib or something. And we find out that he's in concussion protocol, and that's a scary thing, right? That's the last thing you want to see your quarterback have to go through, and exactly what we talked about them trying to avoid. So him being out there and being under duress, knowing that he's going to be under duress before the game because they haven't changed their philosophy offensively. I don't even think we know what their offensive philosophy is other than to let Jackson Dart go nuts. And that's, all of that coupled with everything that's happened so far, the success of Daniel Jones, I'm sure plays a part, especially with the Maras, that they had this guy in here and they, maybe they had their quarterback all along. And what did you do to help him progress? It's the same thing, right? You play to
So
his strengths.
you think about 2 players. They let Saquon Barkley go.
Yeah, I was saving
He
that.
has the greatest career of any running back ever. I mean, that's not even overstating it a
That,
little.
yeah,
He sat down in the last game, or else it would be his name at the top of the list. So
yeah.
and it wasn't much. He didn't
So it
need
wasn't you
much.
didn't just get rid of a great player, you got rid of a selfless player, a leader on the offense, somebody that could galvanize your team, somebody your team could rally around. And I mean, that's complete asset mismanagement by Joe Shane. And he needs to answer for that because if you're going to protect your young quarterback or lead into the future of a new regime with a quarterback that's a rookie, or even if you got somebody off the scrap pile that you thought you could, resurrect, you need a running game. They have to have a running game. And you had the best running back, maybe of all time, in your locker room on your roster, and you let him go. So, you know, there are other questions. I think for me, it was Hard Knocks. When I saw it happen in Hard Knocks, and I saw his feet up on the desk after the Saquon phone call where he basically told him to, FO, and Saquon was like, "What are you talking about?" Clear miscommunication. He doesn't know how to talk to players. This is not just some kid. This is a premier talent in this league, right? This is a guy who it's not just the face of the franchise. He's the NFL's face, right? One of the guys that is the face of the NFL. And
Golden
you
boy.
could,
He's on the
yes,
Madden.
right. Not only, I mean, and this is not somebody who has zero off the field issues, right? Totally selfless human being. And you just let that walk out the door. What does that say about you as a person to not have the recognition skills or to just be flippant about whether or not you sign it over a measly amount of money? It was $1 million or $2 million. So, and then the guy they gave money to, one of the receivers, was it Slayton? You know, where is he in this offense? He's not even targeted half the time. So I don't know if that's Dable, sticking it back to them or if there's a problem in the locker room. But, the mishandling of Saquon and the, misallocation of resources under Joe Shane to me is egregious and shouldn't be allowed to continue. And then today we find out not only are they firing Dable, and again, there's no real saving him at this point other than saying, you know what, he is a good offensive guy. He's good for Jackson Dart. I'm not so sure about that after this week. Maybe he should be the offensive coordinator. I don't know, but it's a clean break. But how do you not break from Joe Shane? He created this mess. These are his guys. This is his coach. This is his quarterback. This is his offense. These are his players that he picked. on defense coming in now. So I don't know how you could let him continue to mismanage this and pick the next head coach because you've already fractured your quarterback. He's gonna have a new regime, head coach, offensive coordinator. That's going to affect his growth. And I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, but you better get it right because you're setting yourself back if you don't. So, you know, there's inconsistency in his roster and ability to build the roster through the draft. You know, very few foundational pieces, in my opinion, that haven't played out. And I don't know if that's because they're not coaching these kids, or like you say, they're seemingly unprepared every week. I know the practices are short, and they were the same practice times available to people like Tom Coughlin, and he had them under strict orders, and they got it done. And they won 2 Super Bowls. Probably should have won 3. That doesn't seem to be. There's no accountability here, and that's the GM and the head coach. They go hand in hand. How do you fire one, not the other, after this last 4-week stretch, 5-week stretch? I just don't. I don't see any path to success with Joe Shane at the helm. And Mara, I know that his health is a major concern, and I'm not trying to throw that in anybody's face, but they clearly were not together in this process from the start of the season to now. And when they divorced themselves from Dable, that was just a bad message to send to your team in the middle of the season. If you were preparing us as the fans for the breakup or the divorce, then you should have just fired him because you didn't make that decision week 3. You already had your mind made up. You just announced it later in the season. So there's going to be a little culture stagnation here, and the whole process, comments, and long term rebuild, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, this is 3 years already, and I know it's new with Jackson Dart, but I don't know how you don't hold Joe Shane accountable at this point.
So I'm just reading Dan Orlovsky, which everyone knows from ESPN. He's kind of like a quarterback guy. At least that's what he purports himself to be. I think he played quarterback, backup role, and knew people. So he's saying that, you ready for this? Is that Daboll and Dart had something going together, and it was a huge mistake by the Giants to let him go.
Well, I agree with that to an extent. They did have something going.
One player doesn't make a team.
That is correct. And for the head coach to lean so heavily on this kid, it's not going in the long term, it's not going to allow for his progression to get better. Because if he continues to rely on the things that make him successful, he's going to continue to rely on those things in the future and not look to progress. And you have to make these kids every week, you have to challenge them to do something that either makes them uncomfortable or something that is not part of their repertoire, because they're going to need that to win in the playoffs. They're going to need that to win Super Bowls. They have to come of age. And the only way to do that is to implement new things every week. And I know it's hard. It's the NFL, and, the time constraints on practices, et cetera. And it does, in my belief, it takes 3 to 5 years for you to grow into your role as a starting quarterback in the NFL. It's just that not everybody is Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, where in year 2 they come out there, or they have, an offensive line like Dallas had when Dak took over. You know, that's not reality. You have to build that, and you have to make sure that this kid can grow. Just look at Sam Darnold and again, Daniel Jones, right? They went elsewhere. They learned under somebody else. They were allowed to mature. They added, things to their repertoire and are doing things that they didn't do before. Why? Because they were coached. They had time to practice those things. They were allowed to grow.
And what three, and you could say that about the New England quarterback too.
Well, yeah, he's leaps and bounds, it seems, every week. But that's, again,
Letting them
that's their
grow, train,
process.
right, and good coaching, and that's the process. Working on other parts of the thing, and now at least 2 players, and now at least one of the 3 we just talked about are said in the same words as MVP candidates, and it seems like the people you thought were being MVP candidates, whether you were in Buffalo or you were in Baltimore, whether in in Texas are seem to be falling away. I mean, it's amazing that I don't know if it's bad playing or it's parity or they're one and the same, but I agree with you. I know that it's a different world out there. I think when I see the way the Giants were going under Dabo is that he was very one dimensional. He wasn't building a team. He was grabbing at straws and he was grabbing at whatever worked that week. And now he had a running back. That's not his fault that it was injured. It was definitely a freak kind of injury. And
There would be room on this offense and this team for both Saquon and Scatterbo. There would be a great complement to
oh
one
my
another.
God,
I mean, just think about that.
they had him. They had them both. They had them both.
And Saquon would be, in my estimation, a great teammate for Scatterbo to have because he could take him under his wing and teach him things that he's already learned how to play and what to do and how to act and all those things. You mentioned Drake May, and I think that's a great example because they have Stephon Diggs in their offense, who is kind of taking a back seat, even though he's the number one wide receiver. He's not as prominent in their offense as you would expect him to be.
Right.
And he's okay with that. And that allows their quarterback to grow. And having Saquon would have meant as much to Jackson Dart plus Scatterbo if he had drafted him, which they may have not. I'm sure, probably not. But it would have allowed your quarterback to grow because you have a selfless veteran in the locker room fighting off all the distractions and teaching him the way to go about business. And the Giants just don't have that.
Did you by chance, you think, oh, I'm sorry. Do you think about Sarah? I have a couple of things. One, when you think about San Francisco too, the backup quarterback, he was cast off too, and he came in the shoes of Purdy, and he's playing pretty well as well.
Mac Jones.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. And I think it's the common denominator is the coaching staff in San Francisco because that's where these guys ended up before they went on to success, right? At least I think it was Sam Darnold was in San Francisco. There's clearly something going on there. Maybe they have a quarterback whisperer in their coaching staff, but I think that that's a good example where those 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 coaches and that GM allow their players to grow.
correct.
There's never this, directive where you have to win now. Yeah, everybody wants to win, but you can't you can win now, but it's going to cost you. You want your players to grow. You want your team to all be on the same page. You want everybody to take a step forward together. That's how you win in this league. And San Francisco does that. And they're a tough out. They're not an easy team to beat, and they're playing 2 or 3 men down on each side of the football. So kudos to them, their coaching staff. Um, Mac Jones seems to be playing better than he did when he was uh, in New England, right? And it's to their credit. So, you know, people thought, why would they pick up Mac Jones? He's terrible. Well, they saw something that they could use. They saw a guy with talent that they could coach, and they're allowed to progress and get better. And, I mean, just look at Purdy himself. Purdy was, like you said a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Irrelevant, and he took them to a Super Bowl.
He had a great year. I mean,
And not to take anything away from Brock
he
Purdy,
was
but that's
scary.
what good coaching looks like. And it's not just the head coach, it's everybody.
But you always see it in the same teams, and that's because of the leadership. You always
I
see it
agree.
in San Francisco. You always see it and I don't care who the coach is. You always see it in Denver, but I don't know who the coach is. And it doesn't matter who the coach is. And I think they hire the right people. They're not intimidated for their jobs. Sometimes that comes from ownership. Though you did have Mike Tomlin defending himself yesterday and no patience for the media, which was something I don't remember ever seeing in my life. Interesting, but I'm going to throw this at you, and I'm so hesitant to do it. Not really, because I'm going to tell you. But so you wonder why he didn't fire the GM. Well, he can't fire them both and put interim players in them both, right?
No.
So, so if you're not, and I would guess they're not going to hire a coach till the end of the year. So they're gonna what they need to do is they really need now that they actually have a quarterback, and hopefully they're gonna have a running back. You know, he's gonna come back and he's gonna be healthy, and I do believe that that's possible. They need somebody who can build the team around these guys, and I really believe that they at the end of the year they're going to fire their GM and they're going to hire a coach that's going to be GM and coach. And you know who I think that is, of course.
Yep. It's a logical choice. I think, it would probably be Shane's choice because he has to protect himself now. And what better way to do that than to use the greatest coach of all time as a shield?
Yeah, but that's not what's going to happen.
No.
They're going to end up firing him too. And then the greatest coach of all time, as they say, is going to come in from North Carolina. And you know who we're talking about, everyone. And he's going to come in and take over the team. And that's what needs to be done. And he needs to take and hire the people around him, which he will. He's never, he'll bring in good coaches. He'll find somebody that's going to take Jackson Dart and make him into more than he needs, more than what he is. I mean, we know in our hearts the kid's good. We also know in our hearts there's a lot of improvement there that
Sure.
that could take place. And
Absolutely.
you said something to me over the weekend, and that was when you're talking about when Dart was with what's his name? Um,
Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss.
no, but who was he? He was with Wayne Kiffin and Ole Miss, and then what television show was he on? The one that does the quarterbacks,
John Gruden.
John Gruden. And when he talked about running, and
Yeah.
tell me the story the way you told it to me.
Foreshadowing. So he's watching film of Jackson Dart with Jackson Dart, and Dart is taking off on running plays where the pocket collapses or the play breaks down or he doesn't find his receiver and he just takes off running and he goes headfirst into the defender like on 2 or 3 plays in a row. And Gruden's like, tell me what happened here. And he's like, well, the play broke down. He says, no, but what happened at the end here? He's like, well, +2. And Gruden says, what's +2? And Dart says, well, when you get hit, you got to fall forward for 2 more yards. And Gruden says, that's great. Don't ever effing do it again because he said to him, we want you to last a long time in this league. And that ain't going to happen with you making plays like that.
Not the NFL.
That's right. That's right. And you could tell at that moment that it was kind of like a father and son moment where Gruden is looking at this kid. He's so incredibly proud of him because of the effort that he puts in, the ability that he has, his attitude, right? Like he wants to win. He wants to fight for every yard. Gruden is, you could just see him seething a little bit, but also you could tell like this is where like he gets to be a good coach and example that by saying, you made a great play. Don't ever do it again because it's not worth it. When you need to make that play is when we need a touchdown at the end of the game and time's running out. Then
That's
you
it.
go ahead
What
first.
even more so, I would say, when it's the difference between you and going to or winning the Super Bowl, that's
Yeah,
when you put your head on the line.
right.
Other than that, you're not doing it.
Yeah, you
And
got the first down. It's the middle of October. Slide for feet first. Just take a knee. Don't put yourself at risk. It's not being smart is the way to play. And I know this is going to sound incredibly cliche or even stupid, but I always joke around. Work smart, not hard, and that's a classic example. And whenever you see a quarterback run and get a first down, and see over the years we've seen that, and how incredibly frustrating is it if you're rooting for the defense to see them have this guy pinned to the wall and escape and not even, you know, nothing spectacular. He just runs out of trouble, reaches out for the first down, goes out of bounds, and it's like you want to see him get creamed. They had him, they couldn't get him, and it's like, fresh set of downs. We got to do this all over again. That's playing smart, right? You could get the first down and run into the linebacker. You might fumble. You might get hurt. You might tear your shoulder. You might get dazed and confused.
all the above.
Right. So playing smart, that you have to use that to your advantage. That will frustrate a defense. That's a weapon. You can run over that linebacker, and in the moment, that might seem really cool. That might, make the sideline jump, but you have to go back in the huddle and run another play. You need
Right.
to be 100% for that. I think you're right, though, about the Belichick thing. either way, I think the Giants have to start with a clean slate here. To me, they can't wait another 3 years or 4 years to find out that a clean reset is the only logical move. They have to make that move now. That's what savvy teams and ownerships do. It's a tough decision, but you have to do it. And, I know that, look at the Jets, right? The Jets had a little bit of, yeah, a little bit. They had a fire sale last week. They probably would have sold more if everybody was healthy, or they could have got the deal that they wanted for in picks. But the Jets are clearly in reset mode, and they set themselves up pretty nicely for that. And they're going to have a lot of cap space, and they're going to have room to make these moves, whether or not they have the right head coach. I know there's a lot of non-believers right now, but it's very atypical of the Jets what they're doing right now. I'm not praising them because it's still the Jets, and I don't believe for 1 second they're going to get the draft picks right, but the approach is right. So if they can hold off on the win now, process, or the win now attitude, and just allow this coach and this team to grow together for the next 3 to 5 years, hopefully it works out. Hopefully they make the right picks and it works out. But they're on the right track right now. Whereas the Giants, if they double down, I just don't think this is the right time to double down on a guy who's already proven that he's not the guy.
So I don't know if you saw just flash up on there, Jose, who's watching. Thank you, Jose, for watching us, and thank you for chatting with us. Just said to us, Belichick said if the Giants call him, he will coach them.
I think he said that last year before he took the Carolina job, but it probably rings true still. I can imagine that coaching in college is incredibly different than the NFL. And with the NIL and the recruiting and the portal, it's an incredible challenge for anyone. It would be easier probably for Belichick to step into something he's more familiar with. I mean, he did it for his whole life coaching in the NFL. So I think Giant fans would be cautiously optimistic, right? But if they do that, yeah, he can't just be the head coach. He has to have everything he had in place in New England. I don't care if he's 170 years old. They have to give him whatever he wants and let him run the team and give him the 5-year window and just bite the bullet on that. Because if you don't, everyone's going to be looking in the rearview mirror. Everybody's going to be saying we should have hired him, woulda, coulda, shoulda. So make the move. I would do that. To me, it's clear as a bell. I'm shocked that somebody else didn't scoop him up already. And I know there's
Yes.
speculation previously as to why NFL teams wouldn't want him because of the direction the NFL was going. But right now, considering everything else that's going on, it's not just the Giants that need Belichick. The NFL needs Belichick.
And I think North Carolina will say, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. I'm glad you have this opportunity. See you later. Jose said, I'll put it up there. So he said it 2 days ago. So it seems like he's part of the motivation to get Dabo fired.
Well,
if they're interested in Belichick,
I wonder who asked him the question because I don't think that's something that Belichick would have just put out there. I'm sure North Carolina's not happy about that.
Right. I don't know. This is what else he said. He said his contract is for 3 years, but has a opt out after the first year.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
and that's what I believe too. And I think that's why they didn't fire the GM. I think they're going to fire them all at the end because I think I think Belichick would look at it like this. Yes, is he hungry? Is he nowhere? Does he want to have another team building experience? But he's also really smart, right? When it comes to football, he's a genius, right? So he would say, I can't work with this GM. I cannot afford to go to another losing place. I started losing in New England. I lost in Carolina. So I gotta hit the ground running. And the only way I could do that is if I'm the GM.
Yeah, my question would be, if they make that move, is Jackson Dart in danger of losing his position on this team as the starting quarterback and the future quarterback of the franchise, which would be a real shame because I know the fan base loves this kid. I think some things would change and it would be a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. But in my guesstimation, when a coach like that is available, you go get him. I said that about the Jets when Sean Payton became available again, and they kept Salah, and he ended up getting fired. I mean, writing was on the wall; he was getting fired. I like Robert Salah, but Sean Payton was available. Go get him. That's the franchise changer. That's the culture changer. That guy's a winner. Belichick is a winner. I mean, everyone. Oh, you wouldn't have won without Tom Brady. Tom Brady. Well, it's is Tom Brady a system quarterback or is it the other way around? We talked about that week one or preseason.
But also,
Belichick's
what else?
going to build a winner.
I mean, what else he did really well is to manage the cap. He really got people, and yes, he had Tom Brady, right? He had Tom Brady, but Tom Brady would win, and then not say he win in Tampa Bay. That doesn't mean if he was in Tampa Bay, he wins for 7 years. We know that's not the case. He
Yeah.
doesn't win 6 times at Tampa Bay. He needs that partner. And it was more than a partner. It was the owner. It was the owner, was the coach, and was the player. And those three together knew how to manage a football team because they had control of everything. They had control of how much money they were spending. They knew what players they needed. There was no politics between the three of them. Everyone just did. Yes, I don't think Tom and Bill really liked each other's viewpoint, but you know what? They knew they weren't bigger than the game and the team. And they put it all aside and they went out there and they made it happen. And they did something no one else has done and probably won't do in this world today. In a social media world, they did it.
Yeah. I think because they know all this ahead of time, there are no question marks, right? You're not hiring like the hot new coordinator or the hot young new, coaching phenom. There's a lot of unknowns that come along with that. You know what you're getting by hiring Belichick. You know what you're getting if you hired Sean Payton. You know what you're getting if you hired even Mike Tomlin, who I know a lot of people want to run him out of Pittsburgh. But tell me if he
What
was
are you
available
kidding?
tomorrow. Right. Tell me tomorrow if you're the Giants, if you're the Jets, or how about this? If he was available tomorrow and your head coach left and you were the 49ers, you don't think they would hire Mike Tomlin? You know what you're getting when you bring guys like that in. Okay, I'm not trying to put Tomlin on the same level as Belichick. I'm just saying that there's a structure, it's a winning formula, and to have that available to you and look elsewhere is silly. He's right there. Go get him.
He also said I truly believe that Dart. I truly believe he will keep Dart and build him like Brady, Belichick. I have to say though, and I think that's an interesting point Jose has, and he also said we're the best, but he must not really know us. The
Thank you, Jose.
the the I have to be honest, and this is probably going to make at least Jose unhappy, is that if Mike Tomlin and Belichick were both available, I would take Tomlin.
Well, because he's younger.
Right. He's younger, and he's created a very stable environment. He's worked with. Let's not forget, if there's any two owners in the world that are closer, it's certainly Mara and Rooney. Right? The kids are
Oh, absolutely.
married. They've worked together. Their
Yeah.
kids are married, or grandkids, or cousins, or whatever they are. Mara's and Rooney's. So
It's different here in New York because things happen so rapidly and change all the time, whereas Tomlin's only the third head coach in Pittsburgh history, right? It's never been that way for the Jets or Giants. Even with the success of the Giants, they still let coaches walk and get away and push them out to pasture or whatever you want to call it. It's been this changeover kind of mentality, especially in New York, because you're seemingly always on the hot seat in New York, and that's probably unfair ownership. You got something good, you keep it. I think Tomlin's one of those guys. I'm sure Pittsburgh fans are rolling their eyes right now, but there's something to be said for the stability of the franchise, and it sets the tone. When you got to like look, they get players that come in there have talent. They don't fall in line, they ship them out.
Right.
It's
So
that simple.
Jose has a question. Let me see what you think about it. Can you see that? What do you think about bringing in OBJ to just for the experience to work with the receivers?
For the Giants,
Yeah.
I don't. If
I
their
don't really
offensive
see it.
philosophy it's one that allows him. Is he saying to bring him in here? He's going to play and lead from example type thing.
Well, work with them.
I don't have a problem with
Lead
it.
from example, yes. You show them what it is, but I don't think that dynamic will help anything because his dynamic is somewhere else in the world.
I don't think it. I don't think it'll hurt short term to
Absolutely.
have
Won't hurt.
if you're thinking that OBJ is going to come in here and somehow magically lead them somewhere long term. I don't see that happening. He's a me guy, but he's still very much a plausible hired gun type guy because he's. Would you be surprised if he ends up on the Rams before the season's over?
No.
Right.
That's
I mean, it's
to me, that's more likely where it's gonna end up.
yeah. Look at the guy like DeAndre Hopkins is in Baltimore. He's kind of hidden in that offense. He
Right.
doesn't really have many targets every week, so that would be the role of an Odell Beckham at this point. I don't think he would ever accept that role, but for him to come in late in the season, if it's to work with the Giants and kind of get their receivers on a page where they're to make them better, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Hold on one
I
second.
don't know that they'll do that, but
I forgot to plug my computer in. It's sitting there and the battery's dying, and pretty soon we'll be off the air. So let's see.
take your time.
I knew there was one wire that I forgot to plug in.
While you're doing that, I'm going to get a drink of water. You can edit this out later.
I got it. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah, sitting there, I'm like, why is my computer almost dead? And in our process, we have all the software kind of runs everything.
Took
And
a huge gamble not plugging in your computer.
yeah, so it was kind of winding away. And do I think we would have made it? Yeah, I do think we would have made it. Would it have been close? Yeah, I do think it would have been close. So we spent all this time talking about the Giants, and there's probably still more to talk about. We cannot forget that the Jets won yesterday.
I think we all saw it coming, didn't we? When I said that it was a lock, we should bet the Jet game right now because it was clear and apparent that they were going to screw up their draft order and give Cleveland
You did
another
say that to me,
quarterback on a silver platter.
and I almost did it, but I'm really anti-gambling for now,
Yeah.
just for
Yeah.
everything that's happened.
I joked at the bar on Friday night that the Jets were either going to win this week or next week. And I said, you should put it in now because it's definitely coming. And I think it was Drew that said to me, well, they're not beating New England next week. And I said, well, there you go. That tells you all you need to know. You should probably bet the Jets now to beat New England next week. That was before I realized that they were playing Cleveland, who was a 2-win team, and the Jets only had 1 win. Of course, they beat Cleveland. Now Cleveland owns the tiebreaker in the draft. So I wouldn't worry about it too much if you're a Jet fan because Cleveland still sucks, and they're not they're not getting they're not going to get their draft pick right either. So they'll probably end up doing the Jets a favor and saving them some money now at this point.
Yeah.
But kudos to the Jets. I think they had as much offense as my high school offense had in Nanuet the last time I was there. The quarterback had less than 50 yards passing, I think, something crazy.
You went to Nanuet?
No, I didn't. No, well, the last time we played at Nanuet,
Oh,
we didn't have much off. But the last time I played it at Nanuet, we walked off the field victorious, and we shut them out in their own building. But we didn't have much offense that day.
so just as a note to everybody, please go into the on the live stream. You can go in if you're watching on Tubu.
YouTube.
Not only you're watching on Tubu, you're watching on YouTube, and you're watching on Facebook or X. You can go into the chat section and chat up there, and we'll, as we did with Jose and others, we'll talk about those topics. We'll bring it into the question. We're glad to have you. We want to talk about what you want us to talk about. We also going to ramble on about whatever stupid crap we've been talking about for the whole weekend. But I mean, I got about 500 texts today, and we were really talking about gambling, and it's hard. There's a million other stories.
It's impossible not to talk about it.
The two worst quarterbacks yesterday were two of the best quarterbacks, or one of the two of the great quarterbacks that are playing today. Rodgers played horribly, and Buffalo, you don't have to just single out the quarterback. The entire team played horribly. So,
Yeah.
and you could probably say that about Pittsburgh too.
Yeah. It's funny. We mentioned
Yeah.
last week about how teams you expect to win losing games they shouldn't lose to teams they shouldn't lose to, and teams that win games having no business winning these games week in and week out. And I think if you had asked everybody yesterday going into that game that Pittsburgh had a legit shot to win and seemingly played like dog do.
Yeah,
Which is
I so interesting in the NFL this year. And maybe it's the preparation, like you said. But this parity thing, and let's use that word, where there doesn't seem to be one of those teams that are everyone's scared of. Nobody's scared of anybody out there.
yeah, I think maybe the team that I would be scared of if I was anybody, obviously we talk about Kansas City every week. You don't want to play them when it matters. The Rams have gone through this progression twice now on their way to a Super Bowl. And they, when they went out and got Matt Stafford, I think everybody was like, ooh, that could work. And then they added some free agents or traded for some players, whatever, at the end of that season and won a Super Bowl. They're kind of in the same position right now. They're looking like a team that has it together. They're looking like they've got all their pieces in place, and maybe they need uh, one or two more players, one on offense, one on defense kind of thing. I thought they were a sneaky option to steal a couple of Jets offensive players, or one in particular, but that didn't transpire.
Right.
I'm kind of shocked that they didn't end up with uh, the Jets defensive tackle, but they're very much a formidable team that is going to be in the thick in the playoffs, and they're going to be hard to beat. Is anybody scared of them? I don't think anybody's scared of them. But that loss to Philly on those those two special teams plays, it's kind of glaring now because Philly doesn't really look like the world beaters we thought they would be. They're still trying to figure it out, and it doesn't look like it's getting much better. So even though Philly got that victory and we'll have a tiebreaker at the end of the season, the Rams might have to go to Philly if they want to go to the Super Bowl. They very much look like a team that could right that ship and beat anybody. As far as the AFC is concerned, I think yesterday knocked Buffalo off that number one spot in terms of their vulnerability. If you look at the three games this year, the game against the Ravens, I mean, they gave up, 50 points. They couldn't get, yesterday was like they couldn't get anybody out versus Miami. And their offense kind of fell apart a little bit, or a lot of it. So they've got some coaching to do there and some philosophy, because they're starting to look like a team you expect to lose in the playoffs and a team you can't rely on like they've been the last 4 or 5 seasons. When they get to the playoffs, they seemingly can't get over the top. And a loss like that kind of, the red flags. I know it's a division. We always talk about division games are tough. Yes, they are. But Miami's terrible. I'm sorry, but Miami's just not good. And Miami took clear advantage of Buffalo not being able to stop the run.
That's their weakness.
Yeah.
That's their Achilles heel, and
But
I
they
hate to
but
say that.
they also looked like a team that couldn't get out of its own way on offense. And
Right.
they've got weapons. I know they don't have, the flashy big time wide receiver, but you know, they've got weapons. They've got big tight ends. They've got a solid running back. They have a great quarterback, and there's a lot of question marks there still. So you have to wonder who's in the class right now. Obviously, Indianapolis is still at the top of everybody's list. They had a blip on the radar, if you will, but you know they're a very well built football team that you would expect is going to continue rolling and have home field advantage in the AFC.
Right.
And whether it's Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Buffalo, one of those teams is going to have to go through Indianapolis if they want to get to a Super Bowl, and if not all three of those teams. And I'd say that I don't think anybody wants to bet on Indianapolis, but they certainly look like they're the best team in the AFC right now.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting.
Ravens now. I know I didn't mention the Ravens, but the Ravens they have to win all these games and they have to win the division, and there's still going to be a game behind Buffalo with that loss to Buffalo, and there's still going to be a game behind Indianapolis most likely, and they still have to get over the hump if they want to win the division, which is a tall task. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's true. So I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least speak about, since we're still on football, all the missed calls we see lately. I mean, what game were we watching? Was it the Giants or wasn't the Giants? It was something else
The Jets and the
where,
Giants we were watching last, and
yeah,
then
but what was the one
the
where
Redskins.
the
Was it the Redskins
Redskins,
game?
the Redskin game where at the end of the game, they called it on the field, whether it was a fumble or not. And all of a sudden, the booth decides they're going to review it. And I don't know. I think we both said to each other, now, doesn't it seem kind of fishy that the booth is going to review something after there was no question about it from either team on the field, or the officials felt like they got it right and they did. But you kind of felt like they were trying to reverse it a little bit. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
I think I think because of what we're going through right now with the NFL,
Right.
the gambling and the other sports, and what's coming with the NFL. There is this seething effect, but I think also it's because everybody is gambling, right? Everybody's got the app on their phones. I know we do. So there's fantasy football implications, there's real money gambling implications, and especially now with the evidence of these prop bets, there's seemingly no continuity from the NFL. It's like, well, with 2 minutes left or 4 minutes left, they changed the rules. Like the clock running and stopping, the clock stoppage. It used to be if you went out of bounds, the clock stopped. Now the clock runs. Now it's only 2 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever it is. So they need to they need to bring back continuity, which will in turn give the game some integrity. And there'll be less questions about whether or not the officials got the calls right. If you're going to go to the booth, then just keep going to the booth. You know, it should be one standard. Or let the officials make mistakes and apologize after the game. It's human error. But because of the gambling and because they're in bed with these gambling companies, they have to get these calls right because they have to make it look like it's legit, even though we know you're not entitled to fair play. So there's a lot of convoluted things happening all at once that make it very frustrating to watch these games or while you're watching these games.
Well, we have two more indictments today. I don't know if they were yesterday, but they were today.
Absurd.
absurd where people would bet less than whether a pitch was going to be less than 90 miles an hour or 90 and a half or whatever. And these players apparently or allegedly were texting their friends, and they would say the next pitch is going to be slower. And then they would bet some tens of thousands of dollars in instances on these pitches and win. And, it's an unusual bet. And I remember, and I mentioned to you today, I think through text, I had a friend who I don't know any longer, to be honest. I don't even know where he is in the world, where he was a broker or an investment guy in Wall Street. And he started young and a long time ago, before the beginning of the dot-com bubble. And he lived at home with his parents, like in the basement or something. And he put every dime he had on Yahoo when it was the biggest thing. And some of you might not remember that. And what happened was,
It was huge.
it was huge. And he made a fortune of money, sold when it was the highest. He knew it was going to collapse, and then quit working. That's how much money he made. I mean,
God bless him.
every dollar he made, he put in this thing.
Yeah.
And obviously he was a gambler, right? That's what he's doing,
Sure.
right? So he would bet on anything. And back then, you couldn't, this is after he was out and retired, you couldn't bet on, there was no legalized gambling. So obviously he went to, what do they say, nefarious people?
Nefarious people.
And
You know,
Jeff, I'll mention to him, give me a minute, I'll mention your comments in a minute. Let me just finish our thought here. So he would bet $100,000 that the last shot of a basketball game would bounce off the rim. Ridiculous stuff. Then it would happen, and he would win. And then the people he was betting with were like,
how are you hitting these bets all the time?
how are you hitting that bet? Who bets $100,000 on a basketball ball? Lunatics, which he was about betting.
Yep.
And he bet all kinds of things like that. And
was consistently winning.
Yeah, and consistently won more than he lost. It would double up, win $100,000 and say, all right, give me double on the next game. And it's not much different than betting on red and black on
Roulette.
It's not much different betting red and black on roulette, but it's interesting. I find it interesting. And I think about that even the mob guys who he was betting with were like questioning whether he had inside information.
Wouldn't have been good for him if they found that out to be true.
Yeah, I think he just let the money go at one point. Or he betted on something that he lost everything. Something like that. So,
wow. Yeah, I feel for these kids, even though it's despicable to me that they would rig these, even one pitch, let alone a game. But I blame MLB, I blame the NFL, I blame the NBA. It's no different than when they implemented the the TVs and the live stream and the dugout for the hitters to see pitching, and they told the players, don't let us catch you sharing the information in real time, because that's going to be a penalty. They knew they had the ability and the capacity to do this, and they basically gave him a preemptive slap on the wrist and said, don't do that. And they did it anyway. And Houston did it and won a World Series. And, the Apple Watch thing.
a couple of times.
They
did it against the Yankees and they did it against Boston.
And the Yankees and the Red Sox did it to each other when they went and played in London.
Right.
And Cora was the one sitting there winking at the camera. It's like, you knew, you SOB, what was going on, and you still got beat. So to imply somebody else is cheating while you're cheating, that's the worst of the worst right there. But MLB led them to this, right? They allowed prop betting and basically told the players, we better not catch you prop betting with your friends. And what did you think they were going to do? Right? What harm is it? And I can't believe I'm taking their side, because prior to this, I would have been through the roof. And it still bothers me. But it's kind of like a parent who tells their kids, don't drink, and you go out to dinner with your kids and you drink and drive home, or you've got liquor in the liquor cabinet and you're boozing it up and you're telling your kids not to do that. It doesn't work that way. That's not reality. So you have to lead by example. If you're the NBA, the MLB, you don't want players making bets, and then you literally, no betting, no betting, no betting. And you're in bed with the gambling companies. You're taking advertising money and you're making money off the gambling sites, but you're telling your players, don't bet, right? The Pete Rose thing, I mean, the timing of it is just outrageous to begin with. You don't let Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. Not that I think he should have been. Did he qualify? Was he a Hall of Fame caliber player? Yes. But did he break the rules? I don't care whether or not he bet on his own team. He broke the rules. Shoeless Joe Jackson, did he cheat? Was he involved? Kennesaw Mountain Landis made the decision. You're all out, right? There was integrity. That's all gone now. It's all gone. And they're
I
allowing their
agree.
own players to suffer the fate of their, it's their, you couldn't possibly define greed in a better way.
So let me just bring the two chatters here. Jeff, who is a Colts fan, said he said, go Colts was his first statement. And he said, Colts have get tough. The schedule gets tough after the bye week.
Yeah, it does.
And then he also said that, and this is his quote, the refs were not good yesterday in the Colts game. I don't know if we watched that, did we? Think
That
so.
was that was the 4 o'clock game. I think it was on while we had Red Zone on, and we weren't watching that game. We were watching a different game, but we were also manning the grill station at that point,
Yeah.
so we didn't get to watch it.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that for you, Jeff, and we'll definitely mention it again. I don't I'm not surprised the refs are bad periodically everywhere. Um
Yeah.
and you showed what was it, Green Bay yesterday? You showed me a video where basically the wide receiver gets punched in the face and knocked to the ground.
He's more than 5 yards off the line of scrimmage, or downfield, I should say, and he gets decked by the defender, and there's no middle of the play, and the ball was thrown at him. He's laying on the ground, and there's no flag.
All right. So I think we'd
Actually,
all agree
I think that was the Pittsburgh game.
that the major sports information news channel everywhere is, and what do we know about ESPN? ESPN has their own gambling site. Not only that, if you saw them today, if you watched Mike Greenberg and talking about gambling today and the indictments, the only thing he said were the facts. They were indicted. There weren't conversations from other people. There were only, and I'll say that again, there were only facts by Greenberg and not mentioned anywhere else. And I find that questionable. And I'll read what, I think I'll read if I could find it, ESPN betting figures. So ESPN bet is significant activity, and this is from the internet, from whatever watch group there are out there. In its first week, ESPN bet generated $3 million in sports bet handling. However, specific figures for the total amounts of wagering on an ESPN bet are not publicly disclosed. And U.S. sports betting industry as a whole reached a record $13.71 billion in revenue in 2004, based on $150 billion worth of wagering. And that's from ESPN.com.
Maybe the government should stop taxing us and just open their own gambling website and pay all our bills that way.
So
I think it's a win-win.
much like other things, and I, as everyone knows, I'm a lawyer. So, and I remember many cases studying constitutional law and spend a long time in constitutional law, where we talked about the independency of the press, the importance. Now, we know what the press is like now. There's a red channel and a blue channel.
Yep.
Matter of fact, there's one red channel and about 5 blue channels. Is there any place you want to know what really happened without any skew that you could go and turn on and watch? I don't know of any.
There used to be.
You're used to be.
There used to be.
And in a famous course, the Pentagon Papers, if anybody's seen the movie The Post, it's about when there was a study about Vietnam done by the Rand Corporation at the request of the Secretary of Defense, who is one of the most fierce advocates of the Vietnam War. He would go out and lie to the people and say the war's going great, we're winning, we're this, we're that. And then privately, they were keeping numbers and statistics on how they weren't winning at all.
Yeah.
So there was a gentleman who worked for Rand named Daniel Ellsberg, and he made he took them, made copies of them, and distributed them to the New York Times. And a famous reporter published them. And at this point, the Vietnam War was started by Richard Nixon, but we're in a Nixon administration. It was just prior to Watergate. So it also goes to the Post. The owner of the Post, the son-in-law of the owner of the Post, who had the owner of the Post died, the son-in-law took it over. He committed suicide. The daughter of the original owner was running the paper, and they were about to go public. And they published these articles about the Pentagon Papers. And it went all the way to the Solicitor General was Rehnquist at the time, and he later became Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And he sued the New York Times and anybody else with an injunction to not release this information that would detrimentally affect the United States of America. Of course it was, because it showed they were liars, the government.
Yep.
So Justice
Shocker.
Black, Hugo Black, in the New York Times versus the United States in 1971, who was a concurring opinion, not the leading opinion, but the concurring opinion, said this: only a free and unrestrained press can effectively expose deception in government. And paramount among the responsibilities of a free press is the duty to prevent any part of the government from deceiving the people and sending them off to distant lands to die. They were talking about the Vietnam War. Now,
Yeah.
we've learned that the press is not free at all, because they're all in cahoots with the government or not in cahoots with the government, hate the government, and that's gone on. But now now we're seeing it with sports. They all have their hands in the pockets of gambling.
Everybody's
so
got their hand in the till.
how do you expect ESPN to objectively investigate what's going on with gambling in America, in our sports, if they're profiting from it? They cannot. And so what does that mean? Does that mean we're going to leave it up to Congress?
No chance.
And what are they doing today?
It's almost like they want
Oh,
they want to do that because they know they're going to get favoritism from Congress for it anyway.
so I mean this. Um, so we have owners of teams, right? Dallas owns 5%. Is it FanDuel or I think it's FanDuel?
I
FanDuel
forget
or
which one.
and New England owns 5%. And needless to say, if there's 150 billion being 5% is a lot of money, right? So
Yeah,
you all become
I'd
pro
say.
gambling. So whatever happens, happens, and you don't
Yeah,
care as long as you're
it's
making
just
money.
it's really so right out of the script from the movie The Last Boy Scout. I don't care because they're making money.
So, so what do
And it's
players
always
do? If the owners are making
you know,
money,
as long as they're making
why
money, why
shouldn't
can't
I
we?
be making money? Because it's
Right.
my acts that are paying those bills.
You know, that's kind of why I feel for these two pitchers in particular. Even though I'm on fire about it happening, I really don't blame them for taking that chance. I mean, you have to be incredibly stupid to do it in the first place. I guess because they were allegedly doing it for their friends to make their friends a couple of bucks. I'm a little less heated about it than I was about the other stuff last week. But this is, you know, ultimately whose fault is it? Major League Baseball put these players in position for this to happen to them, and they don't have nobody
Correct.
keeping an eye on this. And if you're, you know, it's like we said last week about the the congressional committee. Damn it, that we were talking about the oversight committee. Who's overseeing? If you're the team, you've got nobody in your organization keeping an eye on whether or not your players are involved with something that doesn't look right or doesn't smell right. You don't have anybody in the organization going, that was odd, right? Between the manager, the general manager, and any locker room guy or clubhouse guy or coach, you know, what happens? Who's but they don't because they'll kick it back to the commissioner and the league. And then the league will say, well, you know, we didn't do this or we didn't have that or the team should do this or we warned them not to do this. There's zero accountability, zero culpability, zero responsibility. And it's ruined what you know, we grew up watching a different era. And I'm not naive enough to think that gambling and fixing games wasn't going on when I was growing up. We know it was. This goes back to the beginning of time. So we thought maybe we had integrity coming out of 1818 Black Sox scandal and that baseball
But
was on the up, and then nothing else
that
happens
was the
until
years ago. That was the exception to the rule. Now it's
right
the rule.
now it's the rule, and there's zero integrity, and you can almost want like there has to be a rule or a law in place somewhere that should have prevented this from happening to begin with, right? And we talked about Bill Bradley last week and how that the law that he championed, which I can't remember the name of now, the pro and amateur sports
Yeah.
bill that protected athletes from falling into this trap in the first place was overturned in 2018 and deemed unconstitutional somehow. Clearly, and again, I keep going back to it. It's the last Boy Scout. Some politician reached out and made a deal so that the leagues could make more money and gambling would go through the roof because it was only allowed to happen. Then the movie was only allowed to happen in Vegas. There were no online sports entities when that movie was made. I don't even think there was an internet yet. So we live in a different world now. And again, money talks, BS walks, and money is always the bottom line. And we're
Yeah.
getting, you know, we're getting robbed. We're getting robbed. And only that, or you know, the history of the game is being robbed, right? And players are being robbed. I mean, I know they make millions of dollars. It's kind of stupid to say it, but if it's not on the up, then they're being robbed. It's that simple. And, you know, unless they're involved in it. Like my baseball coach once famously said, it's not one guy's fault. It's everyone's fault. When you walk into a room with a birthday cake and you drop the cake on the floor of the table and it splatters, it hits everyone. Some people might have more cake in their face than others, but it hits everyone. Everyone's affected by this. Everyone whether they are or aren't, they're involved. They're part of this. So major sports, major pro sports, whether it's the NHL, the NBA, NFL, MLB, they've got to do some serious, inventory here. And they've got to take stock and they've got to realize that they're in bed now, clearly and openly in bed with nefarious entities and putting their players at risk. And the players union for each of these leagues has to come to the table and let their players know either we're going to continue to turn a blind eye to it or we have to have some structure to this to protect you, which they can't. How could they possibly protect them from that? There's no way to do that unless you just eliminate the gambling and go back to the way it was. Go to Vegas if you want to place a bet. Call your bookie if you want to place a bet. That they have access to this stuff and it's readily available to them. It's ruined the integrity of pro sports. There's no other way around
Yeah.
it. Even today when they showed the video of Volpe striking out, the first comment was maybe Volpe had money on it too. That's why he struck out.
Wow.
But like you said before, what you don't know whether or not it's parity. You have to wonder. I mean, when you see guys that can't tackle getting run over on the field, when things don't look right, they generally aren't right. If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it probably is a duck.
My father used to say that all the time.
And we see it.
So I just want to make sure you go to our website. Our website is stephenjustin.com. You could find us there. Please join our mailing list, put your email address in. We'll give you updates about upcoming shows. After all that, we've been thinking about doing, and we were going to do it this week, but we were busy, a fantasy show or some pick shows. And it's good we didn't do it because you would have lost everything on me this week because everything was upset. Just to point that out, Buffalo I would have taken with the points. So that's the first disaster I want to give you, but there were others. But we're going to talk about fantasy football, right? We're going to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to give a rundown of all things, the FanDuel weekly fantasy lineups. Those are, salary-based lineups. I'll just give you value picks for the week.
And so we're going to do that on Sunday mornings, we believe. No matter where we are, we're going to do a little bit. Like I said, go to the website, join our mailing list. You could send us comments, ask us questions that you want. They will get back to us. And we appreciate certainly Jose and Jeff for both participating on the chat, and the others out there. Please do that as well. We've had more and more, a little bit every week. Though it's a little bit slow, it's been growing. Some weeks are bigger than others. Thousands of listeners a
I
week.
really appreciate that.
And we appreciate all of it. And we really believe we're going to continue to do this. We're going to talk about what we think we need to talk about. Obviously, we don't make a dime from this. We're not doing anything. But if one of the gambling houses wanted to sponsor us, we'd probably stop talking about them. Not really, but I don't think we would. I don't think it would mean anything to us. We would tell them, yes, we'll take your money, but no, you won't control our content. I've done that my whole life. So it's kind of right there. Jose, we're going to get to your baseball questions. We didn't really get to baseball much, but we're going to get to your baseball questions. I put them down, and we're definitely there's going to be lots of days for talking about Mensa Yankees in the future. But at the moment, it's not. So I kind of think we should end it there. What do you think?
That's up to you. You want to answer a baseball question? I can't see the chat, so I would answer, but I'm good.
I don't know why you can't see the chat. Is it it's not on the right of your
It's on the right, but when I
screen,
press
you
the
have
bubble, I see 7 comments in the bubble. But here it is.
all right.
When I go to it, I lose you. So I don't know if you can see me right now, but I can't see you.
I see you. I see you fine. Just read the comments.
All right. I see.
Go down to Jose at the end. He's asking about he thinks the Mets and Here, I'll bring it up on the screen for you.
I don't have that on mine. I don't know why.
You don't see that screen? Oh,
I
okay.
see
So he
everyone, and I
thinks
don't
the
think
Mets should keep Peter Alonso and Edwin Diaz.
yeah, I mean, if they're serious about winning a World Series and serious about being contenders, and not to mention you have the richest owner in all of sports, I think, that is a single owner, not an entity of group ownership. I think he's right. If Edwin Diaz is the best closer in baseball, then bring him back. And Pete Alonso's the franchise. I mean, I know you got Soto in there, but Pete is the best Mets player possibly of all time if he isn't already. I don't know why you wouldn't want to capitalize on that and bring him back. And if you want to make the argument that, Pete's a liability at first base, which I think is kind of unfair to a degree because he has gotten better, at least in my opinion, he has. He's certainly the best right-handed hitter they've ever had. And I'm not knocking David Wright. He's got as many he's the only other player with as many home runs as Judge in that time. Uh, it would be the equivalent of the Yankees not bringing Judge back. And I think because we're in New York, uh, if he goes to Boston, he's gonna continue to be great, and he'll be a pain in the Yankees side, which I don't want to see happen because I don't want the Red Sox to have any success whatsoever. I wish they would just fold up their stadium and go away. But uh, if you're the Mets, if you're a fan of the Mets, and I know Met fans seem to be divided on Alonso, which is kind of an indictment on the fan base more than anything else. I would want him back. I would love to have him in pinstripes, if for nothing else, just to be like, nah, we got him. That would drive Mets fans insane. But if you're the Mets, bring him back, pay him, make him a lifetime Met, work it out. Even if you have to give him a deal, that's, not you're not comfortable with. I'm not saying you got to break the bank for him, but I don't think that's what he wants. I think he just wants a long-term deal that'll suit him until he's, 40 years old or 38 or whatever many years it is. Pay the guy. He's earned it. For certain, he's earned it. So he's proven he can hit in the postseason. He's one of your more reliable hitters. So, yeah, if I'm the Mets, I would consider, unless you tell me there's somebody out there who's better than Edwin Diaz as a closer, if you want to be a World Series contender, you got to have a closer. So pay him.
I agree 100%. I wouldn't think of getting rid of any of those players. Just like we said about football today, just like we said about the Giants, when you have players like that, you don't get rid of them, and they're homegrown, and that's what you want. So,
yeah.
On that note, I think we'll call it a night. We appreciate everybody's been involved. It's a great experience for us. The more people that get involved. So, having said that, thank you to everybody for listening. Justin, always a pleasure.
Thank you again for having me, Steve.
It's you and I together till all of my equipment burns up into a fireball. I shouldn't even kid. I shouldn't even.
Yeah, don't joke about it.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.
See you next.
Or I should say, a good week.